Hey folks, this is Tully and welcome to some more game dev. Here again with a game dev stream part 2. Earlier today we did our first stream of the day for Sunday. Always do 2 on Sunday. And we looked at some progression work basically. I call it combat here, but really it's doing a progression pass and trying to see, is our stats kind of lining up with the enemies and making sure that everything is working accordingly. And that's mainly it. We are on the final day before I go back to work. My vacation ends tomorrow. We've had 4 weeks off. I think we've made a lot of progress. I feel like I have regrets about some of how I focused, or some regrets about where I focused my energy in some spots, but for the most part we completed all of chapter 1's story. All the cutscenes are in place. There's a couple of small ones I'd like to add for mostly flavor, and there's a couple of tweaks I'd like to make to some of those, but for the most part the story and the amount of content I'm pretty happy with. Combat is still feeling a little bit off, but that's what we're working on today. I think by next Sunday stream, because we'll continue doing Sunday streams for the foreseeable future. We were doing that before I took vacation for 4 weeks. We'll keep doing that. I think that that's been really great in terms of keeping me doing at least a little bit each week. But I think my hope is by next Sunday we can have chapter 1 fully complete, although we did the similar thing last year, and last year's 4 weeks off we did not meet the demo target, and it took me a few months until I got to where I really was happy with what I had. So we'll see where we get to this time, but enough ramble out of the way. Let's get back into some progression tuning. So before we ended the stream earlier today, we had gotten in a couple of bug fixes and had made a couple of save files, and we're working on loading up some different templates. Specifically, we rearranged slash a little bit, so let's load the slash template. So I should say the slash skill tree. We swapped out some icons so that we can actually tell the difference between some of these ability improvements. All the ability improvements were using one icon. Now they each have their own unique one. I think Drixie could do a pass on them. We're using some discarded art for the time being that she didn't like, but I just want something different in here, so it's working. So we got that in, and then we also did a pass on Bash, which I think I'm okay with as well. Off camera in between streams, I did quickly put together a layout for Shoot, which is going to be a magic ability, and for Defend. So pretty happy with both of those. And I think it's just a matter of testing a lot of this stuff at this point. That's not entirely true. I actually think that what we should do is probably make 2 more of these. Specifically, there is going to be a unlock here for Slash, which I'm currently have named Venom Slash, but I think we're going to rename that. And we also have a tier 1 ability that we can unlock from the Bash skill tree. I think I want to get those up and running with their own skill trees as well. Yeah, so just a lot of skill screen creation stuff to start with here. Let's bring this over. So for the first upgraded ability for Slash, or your sword abilities, I'm thinking I want to create an ability that is potentially magic based and physical based. Right now we only have either magical abilities or physical abilities. I think I want this one to be based off of both stats, and its real claim to fame I think should really be the ability to move while attacking. I think that's the big thing I'd like to try. Unlockable characters with the Hydrate, appreciate. I will redeem. Alright, so this skill tree doesn't need to be super well thought out, because again, I don't think the players are going to get here. Well, I don't know how early they're going to get there, but let's assume that we kind of just branch off in 2 directions. You can either go strength-based or magic-based. we'll have some HP in the middle, and then we can do maybe a power on one side and stagger increase on the other. And then from there, we can maybe go into some stagger damage, some basically damage. I need to find a better term for this, but we'll have a node for increasing the damage against staggered enemies, and then probably just go magic, defense, strength, resist. I don't know. This one I don't have a clear vision for. Maybe we could just go HP again. HP feels like a real easy like throwaway. Like, here's a node that I know isn't going to change the balancing too much, but is something to just fill in the skill grid. Just do something along these lines, and then, you know, I'm going to be real lazy, and we're just going to swap these and then end with another skill at the very end, and they've turned into glasses. Sure, I'm fine with that. We don't need to completely solve all the balancing right now. We just really need to get things in place for a lot of these. So we're gonna download that as a TSV. We'll call that, oh, that's the question, is what is the name of this ability? Because it's a slashing attack with the sword that's allowing you to sidestep the enemy. Oh, what do I want to call that? I feel like Shadow Step or something along those lines feels right. But it's just, and I do want it to be magic based. Yeah, maybe it's Shadow Slash. I think we've used that before, that exact term. I think I like that name. But we're already using Slash for the base one. We could go with Shadow Slice. Sure, let's go with that. So we'll name this Shadow Slice. I'm going to actually do I'm going to create a new ability for this. We, again, already have Venom Slash, but I think rather than replace that one, we're just going to make a Shadow Slice ability. We're going to make it Slash as its base. And then we're just going to name all this stuff accordingly. Now, in terms of stagger power and whatnot, it looks like Venom Slash was 60. I think I'm going to go 40 with a power of 20 on this one as well. I feel like we're doing 20 a lot, but I think it's right. And then I'm going to actually try spot 5 and sure. Again, I don't know if this really matters that much. I'm like fussing very much over minute details, and we just don't even know what the base level is going to be for any of this. I just need to see it in action. So we're just going to get some numbers that seem reasonable and go from there. Okay, so let's import the abilities. We just downloaded the TSV. We can see that it's imported Shadow Slice as a new ability. What are your complaints about? Some addressable invalid keys. That's fine. That's just errors from before we started the stream. And then I'm going to need to create an icon for this. We don't have a great one. I'm just going to use this sword for now. It needs to be rebuilt. We're just gonna make it the correct size. Is that right? No, 38 by 38. I'm just going to do that one more time just to make sure I didn't mess it up. Okay, and then we'll save that. Okay, and then we will name this one Shadow Slice. Perfect. And then what do we need to do in here? In the skill trees, we need to load slash. We need to go into this one here, and instead of Venom Slash, we'll do Shadow Slice. And we will then hit update, make sure the node appears. Sure, we'll get a better, cooler icon eventually from Drixie, but that'll be fine. We'll save that out. Now we need to create the new template. So this will be Shadow Slice, generate template, update nodes. Sure. Save. Select this new template we just saved out. We're going to go to Shadow Slice, and we are going to save ability. That should be all the steps I need to do. Let's just check some of the other ones. Defend is still loading up fine. Slash is still loading up fine. And Shadow Slice now has some correct data. I am a little... I feel like this is a little lopsided, though. Yeah, I'm going to be fussy, and I'm going to move this over. I'm going to do that now before we get too much further, because it's going to be more difficult to modify in the future after we have save files and such. We do not have a good way of remapping our skill trees if the save files and if the skill tree changes. I don't think our save file handles it very gracefully at this moment, so we're just going to regenerate from template, save template, load. Okay, that looks correct. Remove all, load. Okay, yeah. Okay, so that's just a little bit more centered. Cool. And then last thing, we're going to make a quick skill tree for cleave. So for cleave, we have one starting in bottom left. Oh, you know what might be fun? Where does slash end? Slash ends up here. What if the entrance nodes match? This is probably going to cause me a headache more than anything, but that could be fun. Where does bash currently end? Here in the bottom left, which I think that entrance is here. That's where we just set up the previous one. Yeah, that's funny. Okay. What if we swap those grids? Yeah, I think I like that idea. I'm going to use this template for bash, or cleave, I should say. Generate, save into the template for cleave. Okay. So then for Shadow Slash, I think I want the same kind of layout, but I want it starting here, basically. But then the same... kind of concept of it splitting in two different directions. I feel like I'm losing the creative vision here a little bit, and we are just spamming things without enough thought. I'm going to leave it. I feel like I am going down a rabbit hole that just doesn't matter at this point. So we're just going to have Cleave and Shadow Slice use the same skill tree for now. They have data hooked up in them. They'll function in the game. Good enough for now. If we need to, we can come back to this in a little bit. Unlockable characters with the stretch redemption. We will go to standing desk mode. What could possibly go wrong? We'll be back in just a moment. Standing desk achieved. Although, this could be better. Sure, good enough. All right, so now what? If we're going to leave this alone, I think we're at a point now where we can start testing. Let's go to the... No, one last thing. We updated Slash so it now points to Shadow Slice. But we need to update Bash so that it points to Cleave? No, we did that last stream. Okay, so I think we're actually just good to test. Yeah. All right, let's go boot. I guess I'll just remove all nodes, clean this prefab up. Okay, done fussing with the mic. Let's load this autosave here from between streams. Don't need this debugger turned on right now. Turn that off and get it out of the way, because hopefully we shouldn't need to debug everything. I'm hoping everything just works. So this is a save I set up in between streams, just a little bit cleaner, technically exactly what we showed in the previous stream. We've gone through, gotten the first checkpoint, and we are at a point where we should be fighting the first few enemies and finding a few items. defeating that enemy. And we need to put something in here as a reward, and we also need to figure out what the loot table for the big slime looks like. Let's take a look at the current skill trees that the player would have at this stage and what they're blocked on. I need to do a dialogue pass at some point for dialogue overflowing text boxes, it looks like. So we have 2 health crystals, 2 attack crystals, and 3 defense crystals on this particular run, although these stats will be relatively similar, I think, at this stage. We have no stagger, crit, or power stones, crystals, whatever, and we need 1 power, no, we need 1 stagger, and that would unlock the ability for us to get like 3 of these. In Mace, oh, see, this is what I'm talking about, save files. This save file doesn't work because we've changed the skill trees. And so the nodes that are unlocked in here are incorrect. Fun. I should find a way to have it remember the indice of the node away from the starting entrance, potentially, rather than looking at the exact like grid position of that node. Either that, or maybe we should save information about which node you've unlocked, but that also seems wrong, because then if we change what information's in that node, then it'll break. There's a bigger problem there, but not for today. Okay, so we're gonna debug end the run because the boar is in a bad state. Oh. Hold. There we go. Stream Deck broke, but we're good now. Okay. So once again, we unlock our skill trees. This means if we want to modify the layout of these skill trees, we'll have to replay the save file from this point each time. But as long as we're only changing the contents and not the layout, we'll be okay. Why are you starting with Power 5 unlocked? Oh, is it a problem with the skill tree itself? Oh, you know what I bet you it is? I think we didn't change that from the starting node. Is that the issue? Let's see here. Load bash. No, it's not a starting node. I bet you it thinks... Oh, do we have to start over from the very beginning? To get a good, clean save file? Yeah, I think because we modified the skill trees and our save system doesn't handle it gracefully, it's looking at this node as index number 1, basically. And in the old skill trees, index node 1 was unlocked by default as the starting node. And now that we've changed the skill trees, the save file that we're loading still thinks that index 1 should be unlocked by default, because that was true before we made these modifications. Okay, fine. I feel like this is frustrating to redo this and re-show this content over and over, but it's what I have to do. So it is what it is. So in here, this will be after sword. This will basically be loading up a game in the state where we have just picked up the sword and we have it in our inventory. I'm going to double check to make sure that that has punch removed at this point. It does not. We're going to remove punch. I had made some changes so it actually like removes it from the player's list of abilities. And I had not updated this default debug setting. Okay, so at this point we just have slash. It should be starting a fresh save file, but besides the initial flags being set for some of the early cutscenes being completed, basically. And then in order to try and get through this part and get back to a save at the point I want it to be at, we're going to just like speed the game up a bit. And then I don't think we can die here. Not easily anyways. One kind of small issue is that we're starting with too much time. So we do need to waste a bit of time so the adventurer will actually be gone by the time we come in here. Pick this up. Gain the bash ability. Speed the game back up again. Run through here. We have somehow managed to die. I think I've potentially gotten us into a weird state now. Okay. Try again. Oh, how's everyone doing? Everyone having a good day? Okay, so we are moving too quickly, and we have taken a bunch of extra damage. Okay, so for that slime, it is possible to die there. I'll slow down speed for the slime fight. Slow down time so that we don't accidentally overshoot and get attack of opportunity. Pick up any crystals that we find. Speed the game back up again. Waste some time moving back and forth. And I'm going to skip this slime, because I think that's worst case, and we should be building around worst case, I think. Yeah, worst case is that the player doesn't fight that slime, doesn't gain any extra points. And then end the run. Okay, cool. Slow things down again. Let's go into the save file. We're going to save over this one, I guess, because this is right before we get the skill tree. Although if we ever modify the skill tree, it'll still be in a broken state. We can purchase these. We did get somewhat unlucky this run and did not get any extra attack stats. That's fine. And speed back up again as we try and get back to a solid save spot. Now at this point, this slime should be more beatable. With our defense stats and HP increases, it is far less threatening. Run past this part. Try not to die to these enemies. Picked up a couple of strength crystals. That's good. It evens itself out in the end. Work our way over to here. Activate the first checkpoint. And then make another save point here. It is not showing me the dialogue prompt. I think that is a bug with the skill tree getting a dialogue. That means I'm not moving the yes/no confirmation dialogue back to the correct spot after we show it on the skill screen, is what that bug is about. Okay, cool. So now at this stage, we should have a good save file that should be hopefully in a state where our skills trees are not broken. And I'm just going to double check the skill trees real quick here. Yeah, okay, there's only one node. Why are we unable to buy these? We need to work on some better messaging for this screen, but I'm going to... Oh! Yeah, we really need to work on some better messaging. Our SP is 0. We don't have any more skill points. So we have the items available to buy those, but we don't have the skill points necessary. Yeah, and even if I'm getting confused there, we really need better messaging. And then here we do not have a stagger power node yet, so we cannot buy anything in that section. Let's go back over here. A couple of things. We want to put something in this area for loot. I've also been skipping over this loot item as well. I forgot about this branching path. So we should be able to get a stagger power here on that run I just completed. Which means when we finish that first checkpoint run, we would be guaranteed to have the stagger power crystal we need in order to unlock progress on the slash skill tree. Okay, so then I think in this area I want to put a power node and see how that feels. We're going to grab this, we're going to bring it over here, we're going to drop it into the room, We're going to drag it over to a tile in the back of the room, I think. Here. We're going to clear the required flags and then hit save, and it should regenerate everything for us. That all looks good. And then we're going to change what this unlocks from a stagger power node to a power node. Oh, we renamed some of these things as well. This wouldn't have even worked. Last stream when we were working on the skill screen, I renamed some of these items to be a little cleaner, but that means I need to update some of the interactables. Not a big deal, but do need to do that. Let's update this one and update this one. Okay, let's go back to the boot screen. And I don't have any interactables in here yet. That's fine. Yeah, so boot screen. I6. So we get here with about 2 hours on the clock. So we'd be able to get that item. If we did more exploring, we'd waste a little bit more time, but not too much. And then if we headed immediately south from there, would we be able to get to the first stagger before we run out of time? I think so, because this cutscene allows us to move forward a little bit without spending any time. But we do have to get through this fight, which is not too bad. Yeah, tons of time. We get our first stagger crystal. And then we'd be able to explore a little further south before we run out of time and the run ends. Okay. So now we'd be able to buy this one. We could buy the HP and we could buy power. And then we'd be able to unlock Shadow Slice if we had a sword crystal, which is required for this one. Again, that is not communicated anywhere. And then we can also buy a strength, which we have 4 of, and a defense, which we have 4 of. And then we do not have any stagger damage multiplier crystals, so we cannot buy any of those. And then in Bash, we can buy these 2, but then we don't have enough skill points, even though we have enough defense crystals. Okay. It feels like we're kind of moving through this without much difficulty, but then we kind of get blocked here very heavily on these ones. Would not be unreasonable for us to unlock Shadow Slice around now if we just had one sword crystal that we gave out to the player. Okay, interesting. And if we saved our power crystal, we'd be able to get to here as well. without too much difficulty. The main problem is actually that we need to spend more points, or we need to use bash more in order to level it up. We can choose to skip that area because there's no longer any items. That item box needs to be set. To not respawn on new runs. I'm going to move here so that these slimes can't both get to me, because one of them in the fog spotted us. Okay, Mace went to level 4. Yeah, Sword levels up so much more quickly, just because we only need to use Mace for those final hits, essentially. But I do think we give bonus experience when you kill an enemy with an attack. So that is allowing it to kind of catch up a little bit, because it is usually the finisher. We were giving out the shoot ability in that previous room as well. I need to fix this being passable. I had not seen Yuta's portrait art either. Interesting. Does not fit the details I gave Drixie, so I think that might need to be tweaked a little bit. And there's not much else for us to find at this point down here. Currently we have Yuta just saying ... and not actually being helpful. And the intent is that the player needs to go explore other aspects of the area to kind of find a keyword that allows you to become Yuta's friend in that time loop. Basically prove that you know Yuta's adventuring companions. Okay, we're gonna come back to this slime's loot table. I think this is the biggest question mark, because this will determine a lot of what the player is able to upgrade depending on what we give out here. I think the easiest option is to have this enemy potentially give the crit nodes that are necessary, probably at a reasonable rate. Strength nodes are going to also be handy. We'll give those out. We can give out stagger nodes sometimes. And maybe we make power nodes like very rare, like a 5% drop rate on these enemies, so that they're most likely going to gate you from progressing, but you may occasionally get one, which will allow you to move forward on that skill tree. But I'm going to maybe make this one of the primary gating points. Now, what does this add up to? So we've got 20, 50, 80, and then we'd have a 20% chance of getting nothing. This enemy currently does strength, defense. Oh, we don't give out HP nodes at all here. Interesting. And we use HP nodes a lot as filler. So then this enemy probably should actually give out HP nodes as well. Oh, wrong one. We're in the prototype branch. Close that one down. That one's mostly just for reference, but we should be using all these variant versions at this point. Sure. You're going to fight a fair amount of these, so I think those odds will work out hopefully in the player's favor. Okay. And then the biggest thing that's going to be gating the player is going to be the nodes for unlocking skills. Okay, I think they should be given out as part of a quest reward or through interactions and talking with the adventurers in the world. But for today, we're just going to add a chest next to the adventurers. And we're going to have this give out a sword node. And I will figure out a way to incorporate that into the dialogue, I think. Same idea up here in this section. If you take the northern route, we will give a mace node. I don't want this too well hidden. And again, I think it should be part of the conversation in some way. But for now, let's just add it over here. And then what does it feel like if we turn the interact to get the shoot ability back on in this location? Let's give this a try. So now the big slimes have a chance of giving us more nodes that are helpful, or more crystals that are helpful, and we've added a couple of extra drops to allow the player to be able to upgrade a little bit more. Yeah, that enemy is still brutal. Got a strength crystal, okay. That's low odds, but not unrealistic. We get the power crystal here. we head down this way. Get a stagger crystal. The question is, can we reach the shoot ability? Probably with more optimal movement. Maybe not actually if this enemy's always in your way. Because they're either going to defeat you because you're not going to have enough health. Or they're just going to... it's going to take up so much time fighting them. Maybe if I hadn't have gone for the power node, I'd be able to get shoot on this run. But I don't know if that's really going to make too big of a difference. And this is mostly just tuning around the player going south. The player can also go north from here, in which case they get a slightly different experience. Well, maybe not slightly different, a fairly different experience. Strength crystal. I feel like these guys giving out strength crystals feels odd now. HP crystal is fine. That unlocks shoot. Trying to manipulate the enemy's AI. And I failed. HP crystal, HP crystal. Again, the odds are likely that we get HP and strength right now. So maybe we want to tune that a little bit differently. We can get the sword crystal. And then this character has nothing for us at this point. But by going south first, we end up getting a sword crystal and a new ability in the form of shoot. But there's not much else we can do down here at this point. We can come explore this section, but until we complete the northern step, we're not going to be able to do anything in here, but the player might still wander around and explore, but not find much of interest. Drixie with the hydrate, appreciate it. This is also where I debate whether or not we should have some button to allow the player to end the run. Like even in here, just like a return to Goddess Realm button might be super important. We have a debug to do it, but it might just be functionality that the player needs. Because just wasting time walking in circles to end a run is probably just not interesting. It's the short version. So now we have staff. This is hooked up. Oh, but we don't have any magic crystals yet. Okay. Over here, though, we could go purchase. We don't have any power. But we can come in here and unlock this node, which gives us access to this one, and we can very easily go down this path first. Wait. Why did this have a... Oh, neat. Okay, yeah. Because you level up your skills, and each category has skill points. So sword had 1 skill point, but I didn't have a node to upgrade anything in here. But because I unlocked Shadow Slash, it gave me a spot to spend that SP for Slash. Okay, that's working as intended. But magic is now kind of a blocker, so maybe that's a reason to finally add the bat. I've been debating whether or not we should add a bat enemy to this section in some way. What happened? We haven't created this Shadow Slice ability, and it's trying to load it to put it on the player, but that ability doesn't exist. Fair enough. So if we come into here, make a new folder. Tier 2, I guess, technically. We're going to copy the slash ability. We're going to name this Shadow Slice. It's going to need the same prefab ID that we put into our design data. Perfect. Now, Shadow Slice costs 1 magic and has a CT of 1. That's the other half of this. We need to change some aspects of this a little bit. Now, how do we want to do this? After we hit with the effect, and specifically when we hit with the effect, I think once we've resolved all the damage, I think we want to move the character to the tile behind the enemy. How do we do that cleanly? Let's take a look at contextual move. How do we normally move it at the player? We find unit by tile offset. Is that really right? Interesting. I see. Okay. So the way this is working is it tries to find a unit on the tile that we're trying to move the player to. Does this also check anything else beyond just the... Like, it has to have more information than just whether or not there's a tile on that location, right? Like, it must have to check whether or not it's a valid... Oh, is valid destination. Okay, so first we check to see if there's a unit on the tile. Then we check to see if that tile is occupied, which means it has content on it. Oh, this is the step that does it. This one here is making sure the tile is walkable. Okay. I feel like is valid tile destination and find unit by tile offset might be doing the same thing. Let's bring this in here. As part of the hit effect. Are you not going to let me add that into the prefab section? Because you don't want me to be modifying it that heavily? No, there we go. Let's assume we want to set animation speed back to 1. Instead of checking 1 tile in front of the player, let's check 2 tiles in front of the player. don't need the hit effect. I don't know if this is going to let the player move. Because even though we're telling the player to move to that tile, this move to tile effect requires the player take a valid path. In this situation, I don't think we want a move ability effect. Could we use an off-grid? How does off-grid work? It has a destination vector, but it doesn't actually set the player onto the tile. We do want to set the player onto the tile. We could try using a jump ability effect. Does the player currently have a jump ability associated with it? Movement. It has a push and it has a walk. What if we add a jump? What if we add a jump? Double checking to see how range works. All right. For the sake of testing, we're going to set the range to 50, and then there is no height in our game currently, so we're going to not worry about that. And tiles must be walkable in order to be valid. Okay. Going back to the Shadow Slash ability, if we, instead of doing a movement effect, did a jump ability effect, which I have not tried using in a very long time, and looks like it is out of dated in some functionality, because the walk one is setting it to valid, which we actually don't care about in this situation. We don't want this move to say that it's valid unless you can actually perform the attack. And that's what this is basically when you do a prediction to try and use the ability. If no ability effect says, hey, wasn't a valid prediction, then it won't actually use it. So in this situation, we don't want our jump ability effect to be setting valid anyways, because it should only be valid if there's actually a target. Now, grant MP, I do think I want. You know, maybe actually not, because this is when you move normally. Yeah, I actually think we don't need either of these bools. Is there anything else this is doing beyond granting MP, setting a plan? That might be out of date. I don't know if we're doing that in here. We are not. We are not doing that. Okay, so at the very least, this needs to set that as the plan tile. Actually, do we? Because again, this is all happening inside of an attack action. It's not like a normal movement where other units might be trying to move to that same location, I don't think. Oh, I guess they could be though. Because if the player's going to go first and is planning to move to that tile, AIs do need to know that that tile will be occupied. No, they shouldn't. Yeah, this is tricky. So I think technically, if you jump over an enemy, we would, if we set it to be your planned tile, then the AIs would move to where you're going to be and attack you after you've jumped. No, that is right. That is right, because if you've already performed the jump and the enemies go after you, they should go to where you are going to be. Okay. What does it need in order for this to work? It needs the attacker. So all this has to come down here. What else was being done? That's it. That's fine. This is doing a move to tile with the effect. This is doing a move to file with the jump ability. That all seems the same. This is doing a bit of display logic, which we don't really show much of anymore. But they look similar. The only other thing here is we want to do this plan up here. This is all happening inside of tile not null. Same here. Okay. Yeah. So that should get jump up to date because it's been a long time since we've used this ability effect and it's a bit out of date. So we will remove the move effect and we'll leave the jump ability effect. Now, in terms of revealing, this is also a bit odd because instead of revealing directly in front of the player, this should be revealing offset from where the player is going to land. Actually, this should just work because it's basing its offset off the target tile, and the target tile, I believe, should have been updated here. Somewhere? Target got get target tile. Find tile by tile offset. That's find unit by tile offset. This one. Okay, yeah. So when we do our check here, this is setting the target tile. So this is updating essentially the cursor on the grid. So all of these site effects will be based off of the player's landing location and should reveal everything around the player correctly after they jump or as part of their jump. We need to test this. How would we best do that? Let's go to the combat grounds. Let's come into combat test and let's have the player start with Shadow Slice as a starting ability, and we will not have Venom Slash equipped because we can only have one tier 2 ability equipped at a time. Okay, should just be that easy, but rarely things are. Couple of problems. We need a starting amount of MP. Currently, I'm having the player start with 0 max MP, and my intent was that you would unlock some amount as part of buying your first ability that uses MP. But I don't know how to implement that system right this second. Yeah, okay, sure. That broke. But it kind of did the thing. Why are you performing a little smash attack after the jump? What did I not see in that contextual move that I stole? Just going to update that while I'm noticing it. I think I see. We are modifying found unit inside of here, which is being used as part of the miss. So we need this to actually happen after the miss is done, because we don't want to modify stuff. I thought I wanted it to happen inside of the hit, which kind of I do, but I want it to happen after we validated hit and miss are both completed, essentially, and then we're doing this extra logic. And I think because we were modifying found unit, we might have been triggering the miss effect, and then the animation was getting broken, essentially, because it thinks that we are in the middle of slashing and then never actually finishes because it's waiting for like animation events or something. I see the problem. It's fine. Okay, so that is working in terms of functionality, in terms of like polish and actually looking correct. Needs a lot of work, because that does not look like the player is like slashing through the enemy. We might need to create some new behavior. But in terms of getting the player on the right tile after the attack, it's working. We'll just need to make it look better. Okay, cool. So that is Shadow Slice. It does look like that is overflowing. We also need to modify it because it's currently showing up in place of slice or slash, and we need to change its ability type to be RB low, which I think is going to be LB, so we shouldn't have put the button name in the enum, but whatever. We were also able to use it continuously. It is not consuming consuming any magic power. We definitely had this working for one of the abilities. It's in values of 100. That's why, I think. Each crystal is 100 MP, essentially, and you gain a small amount of MP, like 1 or 2 points, as you move around, and as you stagger enemies, you get bigger chunks. Yeah, so we were subtracting 1 from 100, and then we could just keep using it over and over again. In terms of it overflowing, let's not sticky keys, please. In terms of the text overflowing, how do I fix that easily? Let's go into combat. Base. Combat ability select? Yes. Okay. And then in here, each of these are using an input center prefab. And they have a little bit of wiggle room, it looks like. If we reduce this by 2 and then increase this by 2. It's getting modified by something else. It has a preferred width. These would need to have a preferred width of 52. I don't think we need to change this value. They vary. Okay, let's not save our changes. And we're going to come in here and just modify the preferred width to be 52 for each of these. It'll make them a little bit longer. Hopefully it doesn't overflow to the bounds of the screen. But this is just going to be easier in the long run right now. Cool. Yeah, that's now fitting. And they are closer to the edge of the screen for sure. But not the end of the world. Cool. I'm liking the way that's setting up. So Shadow Slice is now an ability that we can actually have the player perform. Is it balanced? I don't know, but it is functional. Let's also quickly hook up Cleave while we're here. So we had Bash set up before to do a Cleave attack. Does it still have that ability effect logic built into it? It does. Fantastic. We're going to turn on this one and this one. I think that's right. And now it should be able to damage affect the tile in front of it, the tile diagonally to the left, maybe? I don't know. And then the one directly to its left. And so it'll do a little tiny corner attack. And that should be good. And then we'll go in and we'll grab the Cleave prefab name and we will give this that addressable ID. Nothing else had that ID, right? Nothing else was called Cleave already? No. No, we're fine. Okay, so now we have Cleave and Shadow Slice. Luckily, Cleave, we kind of already had built this functionality a while ago when we were prototyping just making Bash have AoE. That's really all we need to do. Let's go back to the boot screen and try loading that autosave and see if we can get in and test that. Continue, autosave, Goddess Realm. We may need to repurchase. We do, because this autosave was before we had bought the ability. And it loads fine now. And if we hit shift, we get the Shadow Slice ability appearing. And for our purposes, we'll just say that we gain the 100 MP starting amount when we purchased the tier 1 ability. I will need to find a way to make that functionality actually work, but that's unfortunate. Now, what's interesting about this oh, the enemy died, so we didn't get a chance to see it. But I feel like if the enemy had have had enough health there, when we jumped over, we would have dodged the attack. Okay, I think we didn't hit clear required flags, which is a necessary step for moving these prefabs for interaction between scenes. Unlockable characters, I don't think I got that hydration. I will do that now. Okay. Let's go back to boot. Try the autosave. I am curious to see what impact this has, so I'm going to debug skip a couple of turns. Shadow Slash is very strong. Okay, cool. This is now loading correctly. Good. Got the mace crystal. Okay, and we can interact here. We don't have any items out in here or extra enemies. I feel like I want to put something in here for the player to be able to fight / discover. And this is another situation where there's not much you can really do. That's, you know what, that's not true. Technically, you can go forward from this location. But this room also doesn't have anything for you yet in terms of enemies or items, but we definitely could put some stuff in here for players who do push forward into this area with their extra time instead of going back south. Okay. What are the major items that we're missing in terms of leveling up our skill tree at this point? Like, what would a player be being blocked by? They're being blocked by the crit, although we did end up getting one from the slime, which allows us to move forward and unlock some more of these. In terms of Shadow Slice, we could have also spent some points leveling this up a little bit, but there's not really much here to do, and Shadow Slice already feels overpowered, so I think we might want to tone that down a little bit. We don't have a power crystal, so we can't actually unlock cleave. And it's a very small drop rate, so maybe we do want to add another power crystal in one of these locations that we're talking about. So let's grab this one. Let's drop this interactable in here. Grab a power node, put that in here, put that in here, and then we'll put the power node in this zone over here. Seems reasonable. Oh, we do need to do that clear. Yeah, because otherwise it generates too many flags. And I have not found a way to automate that particular step. Perfect. Okay. So now the player can get a power node from going into this area. We probably want to add some enemies in here as well. We can have a slime kind of just moving around between 513. And say 715. So just moving back and forth here. Want to be fancy, we could even add one more for 713, so it's kind of just going back and forth. I guess if that's the case, we'd need one more entry, because it goes to 413, then it needs to go to 713, then 715, then back to 713, then back to 413. Sure, just going around back and forth in here, guarding this item. I will say I am concerned that we're giving the player too much power now. We're definitely distributing more stats and more abilities, which I think is going to make things more interesting, at least for me as the developer. But for a player, I don't know if I need to be giving out all of this content so quickly, and the slimes are becoming obsolete, like pushovers, I think a little too quickly. So there's a balancing act here, I think. Now that being said, we don't have access to Shadow Slash all the time. Kind of. So like we can move and we regenerate mana just from moving between tiles. And it does feel like maybe we're getting a little bit too much. So there's a chance that this needs to be 1 mana instead of 2. Halving it feels a little bit bad, but I mean, we don't really have another choice right now without changing the amount of mana it takes for these abilities to trigger. Yeah, we can't really half it. We'd have to increase the amount of MP for each ability in order to kind of balance this a little differently, but I'm going to just reduce this down to 1 because I'm finding that we're just gaining MP a little bit too quickly. And then Shadow Slash is still helpful, but the problem is it's almost too strong of an attack, and so you don't end up using it for its utility at all. Well, maybe that's fine. Maybe for the first chapter, when you're fighting enemies with Shadow Slash, they just kill stuff. And then we give you tankier enemies later on and more groups of enemies, and then movement will become more valuable. Yeah. Okay, let's say that we had picked up that power node that we just added to the game, and we managed to buy this one. We're going to debug purchase it. We wouldn't have the SP for health still. So it is like the mace abilities, because they're mostly finishers, are just not leveling up as fast as Slash. Part of that's because we were also using Shadow Slash in combat because it was such a good finisher on its own. It didn't need to stagger the enemy. It could just insta-shot them. So again, this is all pointing to Shadow Slash being too strong. And we could easily gate that by just making it so that the item required to unlock this node is not found until later. But I kind of like giving the player access to a second tier ability in the MP system. But maybe I'm just over designing. Like, I'm getting bored with the combat, so I want the combat stuff to happen sooner. But for a player, it would probably be fine and feel okay to just play through this section and you wouldn't even notice. You wouldn't even notice it feeling slow. It's only feeling slow to me as the developer because I'm played it so many times. It's a constant trap. I'm just not sure whether or not... Okay, what we should do is we should play test it. We should pick a lane and then get player feedback. And I think realistically the better lane is to not add Shadow Slice for this first kind of demo that we're working towards. And then if players are like, combat feels boring, then we can add in more of the abilities more quickly so that they can have something to sink their teeth into. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I like that. We're gonna pull Shadow Slash or Shadow Slice or whatever I'm calling it. We're gonna remove this interactable, and I think we'll do the same thing with Cleave, although we didn't really get to test Cleave. Let's quickly make sure that Cleave is actually working, but I think I also want to disable it as well. I think what we want to do to give interest is to introduce this bat enemy, and I think we want to keep Shoot as an unlock. We'll let the player unlock kind of their base skill sets first, and then we'll unlock the second tier abilities that cost mana, maybe even in Chapter 2. So if I come into my debug, and we just make it so that we have Cleave to start, I just want to validate that it's working. Cleave. Equipped. Does it load? It did not load. It, in fact, did not load. Okay, Cleave, let's double check to see a couple of things. Number one, you should have a mana cost of 100. You should have a CT cost of 1. You should have RB middle, so you show in the second tier submenu that only appears when you're holding RB or Shift on PC. Still not showing up. And I'm sure I'm positive I'm modifying the correct one. I am. This should be unlocking Cleave and equipping it, and I see no errors. Super weird. Let's see if it's even loading the prefab before we dig too much further, because if it's loading the prefab, maybe it's just an issue with where it's connecting it. Well, it helps if we spell Cleave correctly. It is loading it. Interesting. If we look at the player, what is its settings currently? I do not see a setting for RB East. but I do see settings for everything else. Okay, so if we go into the player, are these preset? Do we decide on what these are at the beginning? We do. I'm gonna guess we're just missing an entry for RB East as an ability option. And because it doesn't have one, it fails to set it, and then it won't display it in the UI. Perfect. Okay. So then, if we come up to this enemy and hit cleave, well, it works. But I would like to see... Oh, I can't use it now. Okay, well, we need mana, so we can't just use it immediately. I want to test it actually doing its attack areas. We should see the tiles highlighted in blue if we use it when it's not got a valid target. Yeah, okay. Oh, interesting. That's alternating. That's an odd quirk of our system. I think that's a bug. These, I don't think should be doing the same facing. Oh, that's... Okay, I think we've never seen this because we almost always mirror our abilities. But the way I was envisioning this, you should be able to hit every corner of the player, or cleave any corner. But right now you can't cleave this corner because of the way that we are handling facing. Okay, that's a bug. I will have to fix that. So in this case, I guess this should be this corner, this should be this corner, this should be this corner, and this one should be here. Okay, so effectively 2 of our facings are wrong, and I think it's these 2. This one should be going around here, and this one should be going around here. Yeah, I think the north facings are broken in some way, and I will need to figure out what's going on, while also hopefully not breaking all of our abilities, because a lot of them have to do with offsetting by a specific facing from the player. So that is going to be a fun bug to track down without breaking the entire engine. Cool. So cleave is functional, but we're going to disable it. There is a bug with it, which is, I'm glad I tested it. So now I know. We're going to disable this mace ability, but we're going to leave shoot enabled. So we're going to let the player get the shoot skill. And I think what I want to do is I want to add bats up into here, and we'll make it so the shoot ability is effective against the bats. So if you go south first, you will get the shoot ability, and then when you go north, you'll have an easier time with the bats. If you go north first, the bats will be annoying, but still killable, but you'll find it much simpler once you have shoot. I think I like that idea. It gives the player an extra thing to play with, and then we can have the bats have a chance of dropping magic damage and magic defense items for upgrading the shoot skill tree. Okay, let's give that a try. Again, this might be the same problem I was just discussing, where I might be over designing or adding too much content too quickly. But let's give it a shot. Let's go take a look at the bats. What are the bats currently set up to do? They have just chase behavior because they are a default variant of the base enemy and has not been set up with anything beyond just chasing the player. Okay. I think that the bat should be getting the find a friend logic that the big slimes currently have. Now, whether or not they both have it, I'm not sure. But at the very least, I think the bats should go find a friend, because it'll incentivize you to use shoot on them, which will in turn stagger them very quickly, is my thinking. Let's also tweak that while we're thinking about it. There should be a stagger tracker. So we're going to make it so high, which is essentially our shoot ability, does triple stagger damage to this enemy. And by default, what is shoot doing? Shoot is currently doing 10 stagger, which is less than a slash. So maybe we want to bump this up to 20 stagger. So it's in between. It's not as good as slash by default. It's a little better than just bashing an enemy. But versus bats, it's like twice as good as slashing. And currently we have it so it has a high damage multiplier. What is its CT currently? What is shoot's CT? 3. I'm going to bump it up to 4, just so that it's not the exact same as slash. And I'm also going to increase its range. Let's go conservative. We're going to start with 3. We're going to do a very simple increase of 1 so that it can target enemies within range 3 of the player. There is a weird piece of functionality with the way shoot works. Currently, once it locks onto a target, it will fire at that target no matter where the enemy goes, which I don't dislike as a functionality for a magic attack. It means that even if the bat flees pretty far away from the player, if you can manage to target it with shoot before it gets out of your radius of 3, you'll still hit it no matter how far away it is. Which again, I like that. It does have a CT of 4, which is going to make it restrictive in terms of like hitting the enemy before they find a friend. You'll have to pre-attack with it pretty early. But I think that's the gameplay I want to encourage. Okay, so modified that. We modified the stats. If it's a CT of 4, stagger 20, power can be a little higher. And then we're going to drop the multiplier a little bit down to 65. So it's still effective against a staggered enemy, especially one that might be further away, but it's still not as effective as just bash in terms of raw power and raw multiplier. Cool. Download that. We're going to run our tool to parse that TSV into our JSON files. And then stats wise, that's the next question. What are we doing for stats on the bat? So currently it has the default stats, which are fine. They're fine. What stats do we currently have on the slime, which I think is an equivalent enemy in this area? It's currently 7, 9, 7, and 11. Oh, right. That is another big part of this that we are not currently doing. Shoot should also be a magic-based ability. Currently, it has a physical ability power. It should be a magical ability power instead. I don't think we need to do anything other than just add this component and remove this component. I don't think it needs to be dragged into anything. And this should use magic attack and magic defense as the stats. Perfect. So that means that this will be less effective on a slime because it actually has a bit more magic defense than physical defense. So we could flip these. Maybe that's interesting. Maybe the stats on this one is 7 attack, 7 magic attack, but 11 defense physical, and what was it? 9 defense versus magical. Could start there. It's just a flip of the slime, so it's going to be reasonably reasonable power. Again, encouraging the magic attack. Okay. And then, does this already have an addressable ID? It does. So if we just go into some of these northern maps and just change these out to use the Void Bat. It still has an NT-ID of slime. That's unfortunate, but I have cutscenes set up in here that require me to control this enemy remotely, and I don't want to go modify all those cutscenes, so we will leave it as a slime for the time being. So this is a Void Bat. This is a big slime. If we want to make this area a little more difficult, this could also be a bat. I don't know how I feel about that. It might be better just to leave it as a mini slime. So this really only adds 2 bats to this section. It's not a lot. What if we grab another one of these and move it over here into this little spot? And then give it some patrol paths between just 6 and 8 and 6 and 4. So just moving back and forth. Sure. And then for the loot on these, we're going to change its loot table so that it drops primarily the items for magic. So we're going to go into our items design data just to grab the exact naming, but it should be pretty straightforward. Magic node, 25%. Resist node, 25%. Maybe these have a slightly higher power node chance. And then we probably want to give it one more node type. Maybe not. Let's see here. 25, that's 50. Maybe it could drop MP nodes at a very low rate. And then this would be 30 in this current add up to get to this to 100. So it has a high chance of dropping nothing. I don't love that. So maybe we change this to be 30, 30, Drop this to 20. Sure. That's probably fine. Okay, so then we have a couple of slimes, namely 3. We'll probably add some more in this section of the dungeon over here in G4, G5. But that should give us a slightly different enemy to fight. Behavior-wise, we're going to steal the behavior of the slime. I'm just going to grab all of this. I guess we want all of the non-default values. I'm going to put this in here for the bat. Drag those into the aggressive patterns. And then instead of using randomize, we'll use the ordered one. This uses randomize. And then randomize points to chase and AI attack. Okay, and that should be enough for this to basically act exactly the same as a slime, but with having different stats. Oh, we're just about at time here. Oh, did not mean to load into that cutscene. Let's go back to boot and autosave load. Now, the last autosave we did, we had unlocked Shadow Slice, but we're going to just ignore it for the purposes of testing and see how these bats are feeling. Okay, bat is animating too slowly for its movement. While it's patrolling, it's slower than hero, which means we have to wait on its movement. Okay. Shoot kind of obliterated that enemy. I'm curious why. Might need to do some balancing. Our magic attack by default is 11. That's funny that our stats ended up being 11, 11, 11 just through the natural distribution of how I'm granting stats, essentially. We just have so much more skill points in Slash than any other skill tree. So we should have been doing a normal, quote-unquote, normal amount of damage with shoot. Is it just because its power is so much higher? Because it has a power by default, we made it higher than Slash. And we went to 14, but that's only a 4-point increase. That feels like a lot of damage, though. I'm going to do a slash attack first to see how much damage it does. Okay, about the same. So I think we've just stat leveled up so high that all of these enemies are major pushovers. I don't like that this slime is not visible here. Oh, I know what we didn't modify. This enemy has 100 health, and the bat has 25. That's the difference. We just didn't buff its health enough so it can actually take hits. Okay, cool. I think we're gonna end it here for today. And that's gonna be an end to 4 weeks of focusing on this project, being off of regular work. I think that we have a lot to show for it, and I am quite happy with it, to be honest. We'll do a better breakdown, I think, next weekend for our regular scheduled Sunday dev streams, where I'll maybe go through a run through of the build, and in the near future, hopefully we can do some playtesting and maybe giving out some Steam keys for some private playtest stuff through Discord is my hope. I enjoyed rating Moonwood Games last week. I think I'm going to do that again this week. So I'm going to send us on over there. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. Yeah, we're going to call it here. I'm going to keep working on combat stuff in the evenings over the next few days or over the next week. And again, yeah, hopefully by next Sunday's game dev stream, we can kind of have most of this wrapped up. I think honestly, I was really concerned about the progress stuff we were going to do today, but I like the trial and error and working through it that we did. So I'm happy. All right, we're going to raid for now though. This is going to be Tolhi signing out. Later, folks.